Yeah, good evening, everyone. So, yesterday we learnt about how to use reducer and Redux toolkits. So, I will update the functionality into GitHub. I asked you to add that into your projects, right? So, I will update that into Classroom. With implemented functionality, I will update into Classroom. You check that. Okay. So what we learned in last session is how to track how we can use the Redux developer tools and what is Redux state, how to configure. We learned about slicer. So slicer and store and what reducers. So for slicer we have create slice method. So for store we have configure store method, or we have create store, that you need to check, because now recently up to yesterday, which one is there? Configure store, and how to configure reducers and how to use dispatch. These all the important concepts of Redux toolkit. We will put in one more project, so which I will show you with the TypeScript, one small application. So this we discussed in yesterday's session. After understanding, so we saw Redux dev tools now, how to track the state, how to check which action triggered, what data is stored, when it is updated. All these things are under this category. Now, as I told you, some more hooks are there, but these hooks are related to server side, server updates reflecting on client side. Like you have use optimistic, and we have like use action state. So you have like use form state. These are used with some server interactions, which we will see with server side interaction. One another example, we will see that, because these, as I already told you in the hooks, we can't try now because they need a server side framework. So many are related to server side. I'll show with one example of a server interaction. So for that, we need to build one complete end-to-end project. Already we built it, but what we done? We done by using a temporary JSON server, right? And now we will see an application with complete backend database, server side API, and what we can do more into the application. For that, we will go into one more concept today. First, we will discuss how to use class components. Then we go into TypeScript. So now what we are going to do, we are going to build another React project, but this time with not JavaScript as language. We will use TypeScript as language. For that, we need some TypeScript basics. Before going that, the one more concept is we will see React class components. An overview I will give you. An overview about class components I will give you. Why? Because I already showed you in the beginning, components can be created by using classes and functions. So in modern React, what we prefer? Functions. Classes are not recommended. But when you have to work with any old project migrating from old to new, you will see some projects are still using class. And what are the things you need to remember while working with class components? We will see that. One overview about class components will give. Actually, earlier people used to build complete component by using classes. But I showed you in the official website itself, I showed you in the beginning, right? This is the React dev. So, and here, so this is the pure component. Yeah. And you can see what they recommend in the modern React. So here you can observe what they do here is. So you can see, so what is the new point is, so we recommend defining components as what functions instead of classes. That means class components are supported by React, but we don't recommend using them in the new code. So earlier we used to develop everything by using what? Class. And for React people, experienced people in interviews, sometimes they ask, what is difference between class component and function component? You can explain few things once you know about these components here. Let's see what they are. So the modern React prefers using class functions instead of using class. So what are class components? How they are different from function components? Why we prefer using class functions now? We'll see. First, important you should know here. So class, what is class? You already know in JavaScript you learned. I will not again explain that. Class is a program template. So class is a program template. So I'm not defining what is class more because that is all JavaScript you learn. In JavaScript, object-oriented class concepts you will learn usually. And generally, when you learned about class, you learned that class in JavaScript is configured using two techniques. What are those? Class declaration. Class declaration is class and name. And class expression, same like function. This is class expression. So already you know the differences. What are the differences you know between declaration and expression in functions already you know. So I'm not repeating anything related to JavaScript here. That's your JavaScript problems. So I will just show how to use in React. Okay. Because when you learned one more thing you learned, class members you learned now. What are class members in JavaScript? So class have a property, class have a method, class will have an accessor, and class will have a constructor. You learned about these also in JavaScript about properties, methods, accessors, and constructors. So what is property, what is method, accessor, constructor, all these are the topics of JavaScript. How you declare, how you use. You learned new class concepts in JavaScript. Na? When you learned ES6, you know that JavaScript class have static members, and you learned JavaScript class have prefixes, class static members, class prefixes. These are all new in JavaScript classes. From ES6 and all, you know JavaScript supports static members. JavaScript usually don't support the static word earlier. So now it supports. JavaScript have prefixes like underscore prefix, hash prefix. So in classes, so this is internal and this is private. Internal prefix, private prefix of class members. These are all JavaScript class topics. Means when you learnt about classes, you learnt all of this. You learnt about inheritance, class inheritance. So how class polymorphism works. These concepts are all JavaScript class related. So you learn class related all these basics in JavaScript. These are all class topics actually. Yeah? So how to configure the class? What are the class members and static members, prefixes, and inheritance polymorphism? Of course, you learned about this keyword. Na? This keyword you learned. So while working with class. So these points are all JavaScript related class topics. So class is a concept of object oriented programming. Now tell me why React is avoiding classes in modern code. That means you should know what are the issues with OOP. What are the problems in object oriented programming? You learn OOP languages. What are the drawbacks of OOP languages? So the main problem with OOP languages is one of the main issue is OOP. The key problem is they uh, they will not support low level features. OOP will not support low level features. They will not support low level features. They cannot directly interact with hardware services. They cannot directly interact with hardware services. They use more memory. They use more memory. So you can say they are tedious. They are tedious. So what is problem with OOP? OOP is good in reusability, extensibility, code level security, but OOP has so many drawbacks. That's the reason OOP languages are not recommended in every application. They have so many issues. We don't prefer OOP languages in so many occasions. So they will not support low level features. They need another language internally to translate into machine hardware. So they cannot directly interact with hardware services. So they use more memory. They are heavy. Tedious means they are slow, they are complex, they are heavy. You can say they are lazy. These are all the meaning of the word tedious. tedious means the one word tedious itself defines what is problem with you, right? So tedious means it's a general English term, which means it is lazy, it is slow, it is heavy, verbose. All these comes under the problem of tedious. So technically using OOP features is not great every time. They have some drawbacks. They are issues. They have issues. So that is the reason in modern React, we don't prefer using classes for designing components. We use what? Functions. Earlier, why they were using classes? Because functions have certain issues. Functions cannot have a state. Functions cannot manage certain activities. Now those problems are solved with the help of hooks. What they have done, they designed hooks. By using hooks, they solved all the problems that functions have. That's the reason now we are not preferring to use classes, right? Now, how we use class components? Let's see one example. How do we work with the class components and use them? So first point, these all topics I am not explaining because these are JavaScript topics. Means what is class, what are class members, how they are used, designed, what is their purpose. These all in JavaScript you will learn usually about OOP. Okay, so here how to use classes, let's see. So we will see the process to implement class components. We will see how to design the class components. So first point, a class component must extend react.component or react.pure component. A class component must extend React component or React pure component. So that means what we have to do is when we create a class here, so we have a export class. So here you have any name, extends react.component, or you can use react.pure component. So React component or React pure component. So what is pure component is here. Pure component avoids re-render. What is re-render? We already learned. It avoids re-renders. So pure component avoids re-render. Impure components so will re-render. Not only that, they are just like pure functions and impure functions of JavaScript. You learn now? We discussed now? Generally in JavaScript, you already know pure function and impure function. What is a pure function in JavaScript? Pure function means a function returns the same. A function returns the same result every time. Even when the parameter is different, the return of function is same. Then we call such functions as pure. And if a function returns different every time, even the parameter is different, the function return is so same. That is pure. Impure function means even the parameter is same, the return will be different. Even you use the same function with same parameter so many times, every time it will return different result. Such functions are called as what? Impure. They are JavaScript pure and impure functions, right? So same here, we have pure component. Another one is impure component, pure and impure components. So pure component will avoid re-render. So normal component, impure component will re-render. Every time it will re-render. That is the key point. What is re-render? We discussed in our previous life cycle. I explained. Now here, when we design a class component, it should have a name, and you know how to inherit by using which keyword? Extends. And you have learned the rule. What is the rule of inheritance? In JavaScript, it is mandatory to follow. What is inheritance rule? In JavaScript, we should compulsory follow. The constructor of derived class must call the super constructor. It is mandatory. Otherwise, inheritance will fail in JavaScript. In your other programming languages of OOP, it implicitly calls, but here we have to explicitly call. So it is mandatory. That second point is, so call the super constructor in a derived class. Call the super constructor in derived class. So that is compulsory. Export class, some class name, extends react.component, and it should have a constructor, and this constructor must call the super constructor. And how super constructor is called? By using super keyword. These are all JavaScript rules of classes, you know. We have to follow them. Another important, all general rules are same for component. What is it? Component class name must start with an uppercase letter. That is same rule, component related. And what is important is it must return a JSX element. We discussed component rules now. So every component must return a JSX element. How a class will return? Function will return. In function, we already saw that it returns. How a class will return anything? Usually a class cannot return directly any value. So what it has to do is it must return JSX element by using render method. It uses a render method. Because according to the rules of component, every component must return JSX. So class cannot return directly. So what we have to do? So we have export class name extends React component, and it will have a constructor that is common. It will call the super constructor, and it will have a render method. Render is a method. This render method will return. It will return the JSX. It will return the JSX fragment. So render is a method. That render method will return JSX. Earlier, our function used to directly return, but now we have to do by using this. And all JSX rules are same. There is no change in the JSX rules. It should return one fragment. It should use properties. All the concepts are same. There is no change in that. Now, what are the issues? What are the key points you should know here? Let's see. Let's create one component here. We will go into this. Now we will add which one? React demo, right? So let's add a new component. I'll just use a simple src and a class components. Just example class components I'm using. Now in this, let's add one new file. File name same. So I will give the name as suppose some name login. Already we have logins and all, but anyhow I will give here login dot what js. Now what we have to do, file name is same. What you have to do here, export class name is login. This extends, what is it, react dot what component, and it will have a constructor. This constructor will call the super constructor. It will have a render method. This render method should return the container, and here login class component, something we are defining. And how to access this is same. So here we have to use which one, login. So login from class components. It is not imported. Login from class components. Okay, I will access that login here. Okay, we are accessing login from class components. So we are having a login class components. I think already it is taken. Suppose I will give user login. Okay. And here we will change this to user login. And this is user login. Because with login already we have component. Now it is going to render that and display here. So this is all rest of your concepts are same. There is no change. So we will use a class. What is it? Container. Just it will get that. So margin top. Fine. This is one simple class component. So how to design a component by using class? So we have to follow this basic rule. It should extend React component. It must have a constructor that uses the super constructor. It should have a render method that returns JSX element. Okay. Now, what is the main concept here? Hooks 0. No hooks will work here. Then how? That means use state, use effects, they will not work in class component. Why hooks are not allowed in class component? Because you learned that in JavaScript already you learned. So class cannot have functions and properties, functions and variables as class members. Class member can be only a property or a method or an accessor or a constructor. Can we have functions as class members? No. So classes will not allow functions as class members. So there is no chance of hooks. We cannot use hooks because all hooks are functions. All hooks are functions. So you cannot use hooks. Then the question is, then how to use all the concept here? So let's see how to use all the concept. So first important is, let's see first state in class component, because to store data we need state na. 1 second, our management team will talk to you. Uh,
Good evening, all. Online students, am I audible? Online students, am I audible? Can you please respond in the chat box? Admission లేదా వాళ్ళకి? Yeah. So Srinivas Reddy garu, only one student is there on online. Huh? There are 164 students. Sir, మాట్లాడండి, కుమార్ గారు. Class లో. Online students, am I audible? Online students, I am audible. Please respond in the chat box. Yeah. Good evening, all. My name is Shrikant. I am admin here, administration head. So we have shared one Google form in your Google Classroom. That is the feedback form. Please open the Google Classroom. Online students and offline students both. Please open your Google Classroom. We have shared one Google form, feedback form, and please fill the Google form. That's the feedback form, right? It's a feedback form. You have to fill the form. Now it's Srinivas Reddy garu, is it clear now? Am I audible? Online students? Only one student is responding here. How about others? Online students, I'm audible. Please confirm here. Satish కిందకు వస్తాడు వెళ్ళమనండి. వచ్చేస్తాడు 5 minutes. Okay. So guys, are you able to see the Google form in the Google Classroom? There is no form shared. For this batch, there is no Google Classroom. Google Drive ఉందండి. Guys, please just give us 5 minutes. Wi-Fi ఇస్తాను. Wi-Fi. So guys, I'm really sorry, online students. There is no Google Classroom. You have Google Drive, right? Just give us 2 minutes. We'll share the link of Google form in the Google Drive. Online students, I'm muting myself. Just wait for 5 minutes. Online students, నేను రావట్లేదు first time. Online students, we have shared the link in the chat box. So you can open the link and you can fill the form. Offline students, you can take the picture, or if you have the time, you can type the link in the browser and you can join. So everyone having network issue? Still anyone having network issue? No. ఇంకా నెట్వర్క్ రావట్లేదా? వైఫై కూడా రావట్లేదా? ఫోన్లో కూడా ఉండదు నెట్వర్క్. ఇది క్లియర్గా ఉంది చూడండి. సతీష్ చెప్పేసేయండి సరే, మెల్లగా సరే చేసింది. అదే సార్ కూడా నరేష్ సార్ మనకు స్టాఫ్ లేరు కదండి, మెల్లగా 7 అలవాటు చేయండి అని అన్నారు. చెప్పేసి Online students, have you filled the form? Online students, have you filled the form? Please respond in the chat box. Once, please share your email ID which you have registered with the Naresh IT. And please give your valuable suggestions for the last question. Not in the chat box. In the feedback form here. Mayuri, not in the chat box. In the feedback form. Once you have done, online students, once you have submitted the form, just send a message in the chat box. Okay? Chat is disabled. Online students, once you are done with the feedback, once you have submitted, please send a message in the chat box. I'm done with the form. Thank you, Himanshu. ఏంటి అది కొందరు డిసేబుల్ ఉంది. So offline students, have you submitted? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, let's continue by this person. Yes, Shankar, what is your doubt? Who is this? Shankar, you have any doubt? Okay, so yeah. So let's see here. How do we maintain the state? In class components, how do we work with the state? Right. So what is point about state in a class component is, as we don't have the ability to use the hooks here now, we can't use hooks. So what to do is, what is speciality about this class component is state is built in for class components. Actually, state is built in for class component. It is built in for class component. You can directly use it. That means you don't need any hooks. Right? So how it works? Let's see. One point built in. So we don't need any hooks, but how do we define is in class component? You remembered when state is created in component lifecycle hooks, when state is created, when state is created, while I explained the hook cycle now, component lifecycle hooks, when state is created while creating the component. Component creation, component mount, component update, and component unmount. These are the phases now. So when state is created while creating the component. Here, who is creating component? Here, who is creating component? Component is created by constructor. Na? Constructor is responsible for instantiation, right? So component is created by the constructor. While creating component, here you can configure state. This dot state, and the state is actually an object. And it will have a key and value. Key, we can define title as a key. And here we will say login. So we will give user login. It can have some products categories. Categories is an array. It will have like all. So it will have like fashion like this. Means all the data is configured like this. So electronics, we need to define all by using state. Now how to access it? In order to access it, we have to use a binding expression. I want to access title. How to access this? This dot what? State. State contains a title. And we can access the title. It will get the title and show. I want to access the categories and display in an ordered list. OL. Then how do we do that? We have to use this dot state dot what? Categories dot map. Read every category, and for every category create one list item. Here we display the category. Here we use the key. All this concept is same. All the concept of creating is same. Just you can see it is presenting the data also. So What is the key point here? You don't need any hook. State is built in, just assign and use it. We can configure directly state here. That's what earlier people used to say, that class components are stateful. They have a state built in, but function components are stateless. They cannot have a state, but it is not true now. Function component also have a state. We are using use state. We are not creating. That means here it is built in. How do we set the state? I will show you that. Actually, here we want to set the state, and you know that you cannot set state anywhere here. You need some event, on click, on change, or you need a mount phase now. And how the mount phase is written in our class component is, you have a method called component did mount. We have component did mount method. On this method, we have to use this dot what? Set state. Set state. It is inbuilt available. And we have to set state as an object. It is having a key called title. So here I say customer login. We changed that. Then automatically it changes to customer login. Here we don't have use effect. It is defined by using component did mount. Right? So what is the key point here? How do we define the state? State is built in. What we have to do? You have to configure state while creating component. While creating component means in constructor. In constructor, we have to define. In constructor. So syntactically here, constructor, in the constructor, you have to use this dot state is equal to object. State is an object type. State is object type with key and value collection. You can set state by using this dot set state method. So you can access state by using this dot state dot key. We can access state. Right? So you can access state by using this. Okay, so next important, I will give here an example. But one more concept is component life cycle methods. We have component life cycle methods. We have component did mount. Component will mount. Component will unmount. Component did update. Actually, earlier we used to depend on lot of these things and lot of time we need to spend on classes. But now it's not at all recommended. For the new React, we don't recommend officially web. The community itself says don't use classes. Still, you have to just know about them, right? Because now obviously you will not get a chance of migrations and all. Means you will not be involved in migrating from one version to another. That is the job given to experienced people. They must have knowledge of multiple versions. They need to convert this class components into functions. So earlier, these are all the life cycle methods we have, and we use these methods. So how do we configure the state? How do we set the state? And how we define the mount, right? So example, I will just copy this. So this is login.jsx. In this, I will copy this one. Okay, this is a simple class component example with the state and all. Okay, now what is same? Class binding, style binding, no change. They are same concepts. How to bind the class, how to bind the styles. There is no change. We have to use the same technique. Event binding, little different. So in event binding, some new things are there. Event binding in class components. What is change in event binding of class components? Actually, in function components, event is I explained, event follows a function pointer, na? Delegate mechanism, observer pattern. I told you all those. Huh? So actually, here the point is we cannot have function. Then what is it? Event. So event in class maps to a method. Event in class maps to a method. Here we don't have functions. They will map to a method. And how do we write methods? You know, you don't need any keywords or anything. Directly some handle click. So, and event argument is same. There is no change. And how you bind this to any element, we have to use on click. So all synthetic events are same. Here we have to use this dot what? Handle click. That's how we define. Because you are using a class, in class, all members of class are accessible inside the class by using which keyword? This. If they are non-static. If they are static, they are accessible by class name, right? So you have to define events, and all synthetic events library is same. There is no change. On click, on blur, on change, on focus, all synthetic libraries is same. There is no change in that. Only the point is you will have a method, but here one more very important concept is there. So you should know that. Actually, what is the point while working with class components is, see, here we will use a button. Suppose we have a title. Okay. Or this is just message MSG. It's an empty string. I'm not using any mount face. I don't have anything. And I will just put a heading class component. And we have a button. So say insert. First point, I want some event for this. So what you have to do directly, because you are in a class, you can't use function. Functions are not allowed in class. So as class member, so what we have to do, we have to just write a method handle insert click, and it will get event argument. And what we have to do, alert Suppose insert clicked at e dot client x. Like this, we can use those event arguments and all. They are same. How to attach this to the button? We have to use what? On click, and this is this dot handle insert click. This all we already learned. So I'm just giving a fast overview for this. I'm not wasting time in explaining all these again. Now we already know only the change you need to know. You see insert is working. But the problem is here. One important problem is if your event is using any alert or confirm or any other action, that is okay, no problem. But if event is using state, then we have problem. You observe carefully now. I am not using an alert. I am using the message we will display here in a paragraph. We want to display message. There I want to show a message record inserted. And how to set the message? We have to use this dot what? Set state, and what is it? MSG, and we will put a message record. What is it? Inserted. That's how we set the state. We need to access the state and use set state method. Now problem will come. Here I don't need any event argument. The problem, you will see that when I see here, you see when I go inspect, you have an error here. And you see the error, it says MSG not defined because this is this dot MS state dot MSG. Am I right? Okay, but observe carefully now, it's fine. Now when I click insert, now it shows an error. It says that I cannot set state. But remember, if you are not using any state, you are just using alert. So you say inserted. You are not using state, you are using alert. Then it will work fine. But when you are using a state, then problem will come. Now, why this problem comes? What is this problem? Why that problem comes? It is nothing but what is this issue is actually the state is configured while creating object. While creating object, it configured. That means state is registered while creating, and this is registered after creating. Handle click is registered after creating. So this handle click cannot use the state because both are registered in two different phases. They cannot, state will not allow to use handle state. Both must be registered while creating itself. That means we have to register handle click while creating the component itself. How is? We have to write this dot handle insert click is equal to this dot handle insert click dot. We have a bind method. By using bind method, you can bind to the current class memory. This refers to current class memory. That means what will happen? The insert click function also registered at the same time while the class is creating its state. That means state creation and the registration of event both are happening in the same phase. If both are happening in the same phase, then it will allow to use the state, otherwise not. That means now you may ask, like, suppose I have 10 text boxes, they have 10 on change. And do I need to register all 10 like this? Yes. That is big headache in earlier version. That means every event which is using state, it must be registered. There are some alternatives also I will show you, but every event must be registered if it is using state. Now when you registered this and you can see insert, it is working fine. If you don't register, you can see if you are not registering here, we are not registering here, and insert click is there, it will show an error. It is mandatory that you have to register the event and bind the event to the current class memory before you use the state. Otherwise, it will not allow to use the state. If you are not using state, it's fine. If you are using state, it is mandatory to bind. It is mandatory to bind. So you have to bind the events and use the events. This is one point. There is another technique also. So what is the concept here? All synthetic events are same, but what is the key concept is it is mandatory to bind the event handlers. So with current class memory, it is mandatory to bind the event handlers with current class memory. The event handlers with current class memory. Event handlers with current class memory. If they are using state, if they are using state, if they are using state. So just syntax I will give here. In the constructor, so we need to have a this dot state will be there. And here we need to configure this dot handle click is equal to this dot handle click dot bind with which memory this. This is mandatory. So it is mandatory to bind the event handlers. So there are some more techniques of binding, and we should see one more option, how to handle form validation and all that we'll see tomorrow. Tomorrow we will discuss some more points about classes, and then we will start working with TypeScript. We are going to learn the language TypeScript, and we will learn how to build application with TypeScript. Okay, tomorrow we'll continue.